You're probably anxious about what the future of AI could mean for your job, your life, and society as a whole.
Artificial intelligence is rapidly changing.
AI replacing some human workers.
Jobs are being created.
However, the more you worry, the more you miss the fact that you are already allowing it to erode the one strength most likely to put you ahead in the AI-forward future. Lucky for you, there's a way to get it there. Let's go. I'm Will. At the age of 26, I've completed a 100-mile ultramarathon, tried stand-up comedy as a self-conscious introvert, done a 10-day silent Vipassana meditation retreat, and approached over 1,000 women. In this show, I break down the principles that help me to do all these challenging things and continue to add to the list. Every week, I leave you with one new simple daily action to build your own willpower and come along for the journey. Welcome to the Willpower Podcast. Today, we're talking about AI and its growing ubiquity in the modern world. There's lots of emotional talk around this subject, fear, excitement, everything in between. But there's not always that much nuance about what stuff really means. There are a few voices standing strong, one of my favorites being Cal Newport. These people keep us grounded in reality as more and more doomsday fantasies get spun up about what AI will mean for us. I'm going to recommend you to Cal Newport's podcast, Deep Questions, again, for more nuance. Today, I'm going to break down what I believe to be the real biggest threat that AI poses to you, how it relates to your willpower, and what you yourself can do about it, which is not nothing like AI companies would like you to believe. You have a lot of power in this. Now, before going on, I do want to just be clear that this is a problem I have found myself slipping into. I am not speaking from on high on this one. Even this week, working on this episode, I was fighting myself, trying to avoid falling back into this trap. It is sneaky. It's a wolf dressed in sheep's clothing. As always, at the end, I'll give you one daily action to begin counteracting the problem. If you would like to follow along with the show, make sure you join the public board at board.williammulvaney.com. That's a way to track your willpower habits in front of everybody. You can add your own, or you can just automatically pull the ones that we talk about each week on the show. Let's get into it. So, AI. First off, we'll just quickly glance over what AI is. AI is a very general term, right? It describes anything non-living that can process information intelligently. It could be as simple as a 10-line computer program, or it could be as complicated as some of the models we see today. When most people talk about AI, they are referring to one of two things, maybe three things if we're being super clear. They're either talking about LLMs, which are large language models, the things that take text and spit text back at you, or image/video generation models, right? That's what most people, when they're talking about AI, they're talking about one of those two things. So talking about LLMs, because these are the things that kind of broke through the public zeitgeist a few years ago. They've been around for decades, been developing, adapting, getting better and better. And then, of course, November 30, 2022, ChatGPT is released, and that was kind of the breakthrough event. However, the interesting thing, that LLM wasn't like a phase difference LLM. GPT had already been making LLMs. They just were more for API use, and they didn't have a client, a interface like ChatGPT until that day. And that changed not the LLM models themselves, but it changed the access, the ability for the general public to use these LLMs. And that was what spurred the last 4 years of intense acceleration, more and more AI development. This age of AI all started at that point, or at least that was an inflection point. Again, LLMs were still developing up to that point. It was just then that everyone was like, oh, this is how you use them. This is a way I can use them. And that opened the door to, even just then, you could do things like write emails, ask complicated queries that used to require scrolling through Google results and articles and actually reading. Do therapy. People started doing therapy with ChatGPT. And you could write code snippets, all with just a simple chat interface. It's gotten intensely, increasingly better at all of these things, right? In the past 4 years, it can do all these things I just talked about, plus many, many more, and it does them even better. However, despite everything it can do for us, these AI tools, when used in certain ways, can actually make us dumber. So to understand what I mean by this, we're going to look back at a MIT Media Lab study that was published and made rounds in 2025 called your brain on ChatGPT. In the study, 54 subjects were assigned to write an essay. They were split into 3 groups that defined the tools that they were allowed to use in the writing process. The first group was brain only. Second group was given access to Google. The third was given access to ChatGPT. Now, when I say Google, of course, I mean the search engine, not Google Gemini, not the AI tool, just the search. While everyone wrote their essays, their neural connectivity was measured via electroencephalogram, which is a monitoring device that measures electrical activity in the brain. Something clearly stood out between the groups. This is a quote directly from the overview of the study. Brain connectivity systematically scaled down with the amount of external support. The brain-only group exhibited the strongest, widest-ranging networks. Search engine group showed intermediate engagement, and LLM assistance elicited the weakest overall coupling. What that means is that the ChatGPT group literally built less connections in their brain, in effect, meaning they learned less than the other 2 groups, and it scaled from there. The Google group did slightly better, and the brain-only group did the most learning. Additionally, when asked to recall the essay, the LLM group, quote, fell behind in their ability to quote from the essays they wrote minutes prior. So we're seeing something interesting here, right? As easy as it is to just ask ChatGPT for help with something, it actually reduces the amount that you learn from doing the thing, right? So when you read something off ChatGPT, you're learning less than if you had researched it yourself, which is even less than if you had thought through the problem on your own with no Google. When you reach for ChatGPT, the second a task is challenging, you're also depriving your brain of not just that specific thing you're learning, but also the ability to go into that cognitive resistance to actually think through hard things. We become stupider when we do this. We also are wiring neural connections that lead us to do it more and more and continue to avoid that neural strain, to avoid that cognitive strain. Oh, one other thing. The reported ownership of the essay was lowest with the ChatGPT group. Okay, so the people in the ChatGPT group literally reported feeling less ownership over their output. They cared less about the result. These 2 results, so the lowered ability to retain and build new knowledge. Second, the indifference towards the final product, combine into an insidious 1-2 punch to our willpower. So my claim is that before AI becomes an existential threat to our species, it's actually first an existential threat to our personal willpower. And that's happening right now, today, as we speak, to millions of people. So first, I want to just recall the meaning of willpower as we define it on this show, which is very straightforward. Willpower. So your ability to exert your will, your ability to create the life that you want, bring it into existence, literally power of your will. With that definition in mind, it becomes very clear why the first piece, this decay of, lack of ability to build new knowledge, new learning, to understand the world, that is going to make it very hard to exert your will if you are unable to learn new things about the world. Second piece is that lack of ownership. Lack of ownership is an erosion of the will itself. It is stepping back and saying, I don't even care anymore. AI is just doing this thing and it's not me doing it. And so I don't really matter that much. Your will just drops, right? It falls out the window. You need a will to have willpower because you need something to enact, something to bring into existence. So that's the more harsh reality, is that the more we use AI, the less we actually care, the more apathy we feel towards our work. Both of these together leave us incompetent and without much desire to change it. It's like we're weakening our ability to use our brain and we're losing the desire to even change it. However, it does not have to be this way. We can reclaim our willpower. We don't need to throw out AI in its entirety because it is a useful tool in many cases. To understand our way out, let's talk about a historical trend that we can learn from. So in 1960, about half of the jobs in America required at least moderate intensity activity, as opposed to about 20% in 2011. Okay, so we're going from near 50% to 20% in the span of 50 years. And this is reported in a 2011 study led by Timothy Church in the PLOS journal. Public Library of Science. In this study, the researchers first used the U.S. National Health and Nutrition Examination Surveys to estimate that there was a decrease of an average of 142 calories expended per working man per day in the U.S. for the 1960 to 62 time span versus the 2003 to 2006 time span. So what this means is that they found, on average, working men exerted about 142 more active calories in the 1960s, the early 1960s versus the 2000s, okay? And that was just through what they did for work. It had nothing to do with their diet, with their exercise outside of work, none of that. If we just compare the two, they're burning 142 more calories at work than 2000s men. The researchers then built a model that took the baseline weight at the time, which was 170 pounds, 76.9 kilograms for those 1960s men, and then it estimated what their weight would be if they were expending less calories. They're expending that 142 less the men in the 2000s were. They took that, and what they found was that their weight hypothetically would be 89.7 kilograms or 197 pounds. We compare that to the actual average weight of that working man, 91.8 kilograms, 202 pounds. So they're almost within 2 kilograms of the actual weight. Again, they didn't take into account diet changes. They didn't take into account exercise routines, any of that. They just said, based on working this much, this actively, here's how much they would weigh if they worked less actively. They had this many more calories every day that weren't getting burned. So what does this mean? Surely there are lots of factors that feed into the increase in weight that we've seen in America, the rise in obesity. But we see that there could be this underlining factor, this thing that's actually doing most of the heavy lifting, most of the cause of obesity could actually just be the fact that our work is no longer the same physical nature that it used to be. So why did we stop doing physical work? Well, we became more efficient. As a society, we became better at getting things physically done without needing to use human manpower to do it, right? So we found ways to make our labor go farther by using tools that make it, accelerate our use. And we also found ways to automate labor using robots, using automatic machinery. Also learned that our brains have the potential to be much more valuable than our pure labors alone, given the right leverage. However, we also see that by turning our backs on the healthy use of our body, we began to let them fall apart. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. That's what's happening now, is my claim, to our minds. We are turning our back on the use of our mind, and we are turning it over to AI, and we're not really fully realizing what that actually could mean. So similar to this turning our backs on our physical bodies and our physical needs, we are turning our backs on our cognitive needs, letting AI do the work for us. We are atrophying our minds. If I had to guess, society is more likely to be harmed by this obesity of the mind epidemic than by AI taking over all jobs. So we can learn from this study. There are plenty of healthy people who work jobs that don't require activity and they stay healthy. How do they do it? The first obvious answer is just stay cognitively active, right? Go to the mental gym. So the people who remain healthy, physically healthy, despite shifting towards knowledge work or desk jobs or whatever, is because they do active things outside of work, right? So what could that look like for us cognitively? It's going to look like pursuing things that don't use AI, but are still cognitively demanding. Find things that are meaningful to you. Learn music, learn language. Do things that push you to the edge of your ability, but that actually still means something, okay? So find things to take ownership over that are also challenging. Avoid using AI in these hobbies, in these pursuits. Do this more and more, and you will be able to maintain your cognitive strength. You'll be able to avoid this obesity phenomenon. Now, there is a way that this analogy falls apart. And the reason it does is because you could take people who were doing physical work and move them into more knowledge work areas, and they would be much more productive for society, right? Because of these leveraged things going on. They're able to do more with their brain than with their body. However, that is far from obvious with AI. This would assume that AI is able to do everything that humans can do knowledge-wise, which is simply not the case. This is the kind of thing that we're seeing AI companies push on us, which is that AI is soon going to be smarter than humans in every single way. That doesn't seem to be the case. We'll outline below what AI is actually doing. A better analogy for this is the analogy of a ditch digger. So let's say you're a ditch digger and you have a shovel, okay? And you're assigned to dig a ditch. Dig the ditch right there, use the shovel. You go about it, it's hard work, you do it, and you get done with it. Now you're given an excavator and you go, whoa, this is going to be way faster. This thing is awesome. I can shovel so much more dirt with this. It's so much easier for me. I can go a lot longer. Here's the thing though. You need more skills to use it. You might actually need more physical ability to manage such a large piece of machinery, and your work is going to be accelerated, okay? So what that means, it's going to be multiplied. If you are bad at using an excavator, it is not going to go very fast. It's not going to go well. You're going to just dig a shitty hole. You might miss the spot. You might take most of the time figuring out how to use it. If you are not a skilled user of the excavator, it is not going to help, okay? It's actually going to detract. So that's a better analogy for what AI means for most people. It gives our cognitive abilities more leverage, okay? That means that concentrated focus and problem-solving skills are now more important than ever. So if we're getting real, here are the two things that AI can do for us at the moment. It can automate specific types of tasks. If part of your job is just putting data into spreadsheets or moving it around between spreadsheets or manipulating it in spreadsheets, you can probably just find a way to automate that with AI, okay? And now that part of your job, you no longer have to do. You are just in charge of making much higher level decisions around the data, around what it means, things of that nature. AI can do this thing just as good as you can, and so you might as well automate it, okay? The list of things AI can do automatically is much shorter than we think. So make sure that AI can do the thing as good as you. There's no reason that you need to be doing it. There's no extra value added by you doing it, and then automate that part of your job. Number two, it can multiply the results for certain tasks, okay? The best example of this is software engineering. Software engineers can multiply their outputs by using AI. They can work at a much higher rate. This is similar to our moving from a shovel to an excavator. You can work at a much higher rate, but we're going to talk about how it requires more skill and your cognitive abilities become more important, not less. So we are going to talk about first automation. So we talked about that. If you can automate pieces of your job, there is often the fear that AI is going to take your job completely. This is pretty unlikely. If you're in a job that is fully automatable, like you don't add any value outside of what AI could do, if you are literally just moving stuff around, it's probably valuable for you to understand how to automate these things with AI and look for a job that potentially encompasses this, but adds on an extra layer of decision making on top of it. If you're able to automate things within your work, again, we're speaking about automation in the sense of AI can do it the same as I can, right? Don't go gung-ho on AI needs to automate everything. Find specific things that AI can do just the same as a human. Like writing is not one of those, okay? AI is not writing the same as humans. AI is not testing software in the same as humans. AI is not designing things in the same level as humans, okay? Find the things that AI can actually do the exact same as a human, automate that, okay? Moving stuff around, setting up appointments, again, spreadsheets, that type of stuff, data manipulation. AI can probably do that stuff at the same level. Learn how to automate it yourself, and you become extremely more valuable to your company now because you are able to do so much more because pieces of your role are automated. You can multiply your own efforts. That's number one. If you are in a role like a software engineer, in a place where AI multiplies your work, your cognitive ability is now more important than ever before, okay? Again, back to the excavator. Your knowledge and effort is multiplied, okay? When you were writing code before and you were slow because you were limited by how fast you can write code and limited by low-level intricacies of writing code that you now don't have to worry about. However, there are still a multitude of things that affect your work. You can now have an agent writing the low-level code for you, but guess what? If you give their agent poor directions, you're going to end up with a bunch of code that doesn't matter, okay? So someone with low cognitive bandwidth before would write a little bit of shitty code. Someone with high cognitive bandwidth now, someone with a low cognitive bandwidth now is going to write a lot of shitty code, okay? Does that make sense? It's like the being a better programmer now just means you are way, way, way better. And so your cognitive abilities matter that much more versus your coworkers who are not as, not thinking deeply about the projects, not putting the cognitive effort into it. They are going to create a lot of shittiness, a lot of a product that just doesn't matter, doesn't help anybody. Okay. So that's where we see cognitive reasoning, the very thing that this constant AI use is eroding based on the Your Brain on ChatGPT study that we talked about, is actually the most valuable thing you are going to own when it comes to using AI. To be clear, it isn't just AI in general that erodes our cognitive ability, okay? AI can be a very, very useful tool as we're talking about, as it can automate certain tasks and it can multiply other efforts. However, when it's used in certain ways, it does exactly the opposite. So here are my general guidelines for using AI. First, in your personal life, I think that there is very, very limited beneficial use cases for AI, okay? There potentially are some. For example, I would make a specific running plan for myself using ChatGPT. That seems to be somewhat useful because I could go research and learn how to make the most optimal training plan. I don't really feel like I need to learn that kind of thing. I just want something that just tells me, here's how to get up to a marathon. There's very limited, I believe, uses that are actually beneficial. I think the more you are going back and forth with AI like a human, the more you are actually damaging certain social pieces of your brain. And you're also doing this thing where we are just outsourcing thinking in general. It's still unclear that AI is any better at thinking, coming up with ideas than humans. So there's very limited use, and you're also just eroding your own ability to use that skill. Now let's talk about work. If you use AI for work, you should be spending lots of time planning out how you're going to use AI, writing out like a project description, writing out clearly what you actually want to have happen and what the purpose of it is, okay? What tends to happen is because we can build anything, we build everything, right? And we build a lot of things that nobody actually cares about, nobody needs, or we give unclear directions to our AI agents, and they just make things that aren't that important, okay? So the human element is now more so how good of a project structure can you build? How useful can you actually make it? Can you make sure that it's something that people actually need? Even if it's just something that you need, is it actually going to solve your use case? Or are you just passing it to AI because it feels productive to do? You should treat your relationship with AI as a boss and an employee, and your AI employee is really good at following directions, but he is not good at thinking for himself, okay? So that's the relationship you should be building. You should not be asking your employee what it wants to work on, what it should be working on, how to do this better. You should be coming up with that yourself and assigning it to the employee, okay? These are the pieces that humans are good at. The employee, the AI, is very good at executing. You should be coming up with your own ideas, your own plans. You build the blueprint and you let the AI carry it out, okay? AI should not be thinking for you. It should not be coming up with plans. It should be very limited back and forth, okay? I know a lot of people, and again, this is the thing I fall into, is just like having this dialogue with AI. Oh, I should try this. And it goes, oh, excellent. That's a great idea. You totally should do this. And then you say, oh, no, I should actually not do that ever. He goes, yeah, you're totally right. You should not ever do that. It feels like it's helping us. It feels like we're being productive because we're thinking through it. We're brainstorming. I have seen a little evidence to show that there is any benefit to that. And I think there is actually a great drawback to this back and forth with ChatGPT. In general, the biggest thing I can say, do not use AI to think for you. So let's talk about our action of the week. Every week we come up with one simple action to put our concept into practice. AI is a tool. Our action is to every day, every morning, just ask yourself, how will AI improve my quality of life today? Many days, the answer is probably going to be, it won't. There's no way for me to use more AI today is going to help me, right? And then you probably won't need to use it. On some days, you might say, oh yeah, there is actually this thing I want to do for work later that is going to help me. And then from there, you say, this is how I'm going to use it. Okay. So super simple action. It's just this line of reasoning. Is it going to help me today? How? The answer is no. Okay, we're just not going to use it today because there's no way it's going to actually help me today. You might have a way of using it come up later in the day. That's what I mean to say. If that happens, use the same line of reasoning. But the action for the week is just this one-time morning reflection. How can AI help me today? Oh, it can't. Okay, never mind. This is just a good way to begin to consciously think about how we're using AI and not fall into this trap of like, I need to use AI any way I can because it's so useful. It's such a great tool. I should use it everywhere. It can actually take over my life. It can work for me. I never have to do anything again. Like, it just keeps us out of that spiral of just doom. And again, that spiral of doom we kind of talked about is not really real. It's kind of made up. It's this fear tactic to get us to want to use it more. Now, I scratched the surface today. There is so much more to talk about as it comes to AI use in work and your personal life. So I'm going to once again refer you over to Cal Newport, his podcast Deep Questions, not his Deep Work book. Go listen to that if this idea, this topic sparked any interest, because he has a lot of great ideas, actions, and he also follows the updates in the current state of AI. So if you're ever getting caught in this loop of like, oh man, this new model came out and it's changing everything and we're all doomed, go listen to Cal Newport. He will break it down in a way that's actually, number one, true, and number two, typically more based in reality, more like optimistic about here's what this actually means. Here's what to do with this information. Typically, it's not what the general media is making us believe. One other connection I wanted to draw, just to bring your attention to it, is the connection to social media. So about 15-ish years ago is when social media really started to pick up, right? And especially with mobile phones, right? We started using smartphones for social media. And that's when it really, like, everyone started to adopt it. At the time, there was kind of this idea that social media was just a overall all positive. You just get to connect with people more. You get more access to more people. Perfect. What's not to love about that? Now we are beginning to see some of those negative consequences that we did not see before, we were not aware of. I think something very similar is happening with AI, where we are just wholeheartedly adopting it as, oh, this is just positive. It's great to use AI. It is so helpful for us. We're not thinking about the personal implications. So I don't want it to take you 20 years to understand the actual effects, because I think we are going to begin to see those, similar to this Your Brain on ChatGPT study. So I just want to bring your attention to that and just say to be careful about what you are using and how much you're using it and in what way you are using it. So most important part of the show, commitment time. If you're in on this daily line of questioning about how am I using AI today, I just want you to commit to it. Comment below if you are committing. It's a great way to put yourself out there and really, really dial it in. And say it with me now. I will do this in the next 24 hours. Say it out loud. Space for you to say it. And this is the most important part again. Put it out into the world. Sometimes just saying it changes the way that your brain sees it, and your brain goes, okay, I actually said that. I got to follow through that. If you are interested in working with me one-on-one, I'm currently coaching a few men, typically in their 20s. I help with things like this, helping you to understand the way that your current life is not the one that you want and how to actually get it there. Okay. A lot of the stuff we talk about on the podcast is what I help men with. If you feel like you would like to begin building that life, I'm doing 4 weeks free right now. So worst case, we work together for 4 weeks. You get whatever value you can, and then we part ways. Take a look, williammulvaney.com/book if you're interested in that. Rules of the show. This show has rules. First of all, we always aim for 5 out of 7 actions per week, and we always try and do the action within 24 hours. Second, we don't add too many habits all at once. That is a recipe for burnout. Third, we do each action for at least a month before deciding if we want to quit or not. Fourth, we track our habits. Again, I built a public board for us to use. That is a way to get public accountability, community accountability. You can see everything, and it makes it just easier because you can not only add your own habits, but you can easily pull in the ones from the show. So if you listen to an episode and go, I do want to follow that one, I did my commitment, go in and add it on the board. It's super simple. Awesome. That is all we got for today. Thank you for listening. Comment if anything stood out to you. If you like this kind of stuff, follow, subscribe based on what platform you're on, like the video. Sharing really helps. So if you know someone who could benefit from something like this, share the link. More important than anything is to actually commit to the action, follow through with it. That's like the number one reason I do this. The following, subscribers, all that stuff is cool, but if no one actually does it, then it means nothing. So do the action, comment below if you want to commit. And that is all we got for today. Bye, everybody.